It was a Wednesday, one of those gray, sluggish days where even the school walls seemed tired of holding themselves up. I remember it clearly because it was right before winter break, and everyone, including the teachers, had mentally checked out. The halls smelled faintly of disinfectant and cafeteria pizza, the usual perfume of monotony. I had my earbuds in, half listening to a podcast about unsolved mysteries while walking to fifth period. My school wasn't big, just a 2-story building with long hallways and flickering fluorescent lights. I'd been going there for 3 years and I knew every corner, every classroom, every creaky tile in the floor. Or at least I thought I did. That day, though, something was off. As I turned the corner toward the science wing, I saw a janitor's cart sitting in the middle of the hallway. Nothing unusual, except that I'd never seen this janitor before. He was tall, wearing a gray uniform with no name tag, and his face was partly hidden behind a surgical mask. He was mopping the floor in slow, deliberate motions, but what caught my attention was that his mop wasn't wet. The floor was bone dry. He didn't look up as I passed. I gave a polite nod anyway, but something about him made my skin crawl. His movements were too rhythmic, almost mechanical. When I reached my classroom, everyone was already inside. Mr. Fletcher, our history teacher, was writing something on the board. He greeted me with his usual sarcastic, "Nice of you to join us," and I mumbled an apology while slipping into my seat. The class went on like any other. Boring PowerPoint slides, the sound of kids whispering, the radiator clanking from the cold outside. About halfway through class, the intercom crackled. "Attention staff and students, this is a lockdown. This is not a drill." The room froze. You could feel the air get heavy instantly. Mr. Fletcher dropped the marker and turned off the lights, his calm demeanor replaced with urgency. "Everyone back wall now." We huddled in the corner, pressed against the bookshelf. Someone giggled nervously and another kid shushed them. The silence that followed was deafening, only the faint hum of the lights above. Then the intercom clicked again, this time faint static, like someone had pressed the mic accidentally. I thought I heard whispering, maybe a man's voice saying something I couldn't make out. And then it cut off. Mr. Fletcher muttered, "That's not protocol." Minutes passed. 10, maybe 15. The hallway outside was dead quiet. I tried to check my phone, but my hands were shaking too much. No service. That always happened during lockdowns. The signal in our building was terrible, especially near the science wing. Then, faintly, we heard footsteps. Slow, dragging footsteps echoing down the hall. Everyone held their breath. Mr. Fletcher signaled us to stay silent. The steps stopped outside our door. A shadow fell across the bottom of the doorframe, 2 feet standing still. Then came the knock. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. Someone whimpered. Mr. Fletcher put a finger to his lips. The knocking came again, louder this time. Then silence, and then a sound none of us could mistake, the metallic jingle of keys. Someone outside was trying to unlock the door. Mr. Fletcher quietly stood up, moved toward the handle, and held it tight from the inside. Whoever it was on the other side tried turning it again. Then the person whispered something so faint I almost thought I imagined it. "Let me in. Please." It was a woman's voice. Shaky, desperate. One of the girls whispered, "It's the principal." Let her in, but I knew it wasn't. The principal's voice was distinct, firm, older. This one sounded wrong, like someone trying to mimic her tone but getting it slightly off, like an echo. Mr. Fletcher whispered, "Stay quiet." The knocking stopped. The footsteps started again, slower this time, moving down the hall until they faded completely. We waited another 20 minutes before the intercom came back on. This time it was the real principal. Her voice trembled slightly. "The lockdown is over. Teachers, please resume your classes." Relief washed over the room. Kids started whispering and grabbing their phones. Mr. Fletcher, though, looked uneasy. He waited a few minutes before turning on the lights. That's when I noticed something strange on the door handle. Faint gray smudges, like fingerprints, but darker. Almost ash-colored. I didn't say anything. Class ended early and I left with my friends, trying to laugh it off. Everyone assumed it had been a false alarm or maybe a threat call. But as I walked past the janitor's cart again, I realized it was gone, and so was the janitor. The next morning, the school was buzzing with rumors. Some kids said someone tried to break in. Others claimed a student went missing during the lockdown. The teachers refused to say anything. By third period, everything seemed to be back to normal, until the announcement came again. Attention staff and students, please proceed into lockdown. This is not a drill. You could feel the collective panic ripple through the halls. Teachers rushed to close blinds and lock doors. I was in the library this time, near the back by the old archives room, a section barely anyone used. Ms. Harris, the librarian, ushered everyone behind the bookshelves. The lights went off, and we crouched low. My heart was pounding. Then faintly I heard it again. The same dragging footsteps. Ms. Harris whispered, "Stay down." The steps grew louder, closer, until they stopped right outside the library. Through the crack between the shelves, I could see the faint light from the hallway spilling in. The door creaked open. Someone entered. The silhouette was tall, male, maybe, holding what looked like a long mop handle. My stomach dropped. It was him, the same janitor from yesterday. He moved slowly, methodically, scanning the aisles between bookshelves. The mop handle tapped against the floor with every step. Tap, tap, tap. He stopped near the center of the library, turning his head like he was listening for something. Then he whispered, "Where did you go?" I froze. I could feel the person next to me trembling. He walked toward the back and toward the archives room. The door creaked open, then slammed shut behind him. We waited. Minutes passed. Nothing. Then Ms. Harris quietly stood up and whispered, "Stay here," before tiptoeing toward the back. I wanted to grab her arm to stop her, but she was already gone. The silence stretched. Then suddenly, a scream, not loud, muffled. Then another. Kids started crying. Some bolted for the exit before I could stop them. I followed. We ran down the hall, ignoring Ms. Harris's voice shouting something I couldn't make out. We didn't stop until we were outside. Police cars were already pulling up to the front of the school. Someone must have triggered the alarm. They ushered us away from the building, asking questions, taking names. Later, they told us they found nothing inside. No janitor. No one in the archives room. Ms. Harris was fine but shaken. She claimed she'd seen a man in a gray uniform standing by the shelves, and when she turned on her flashlight, he vanished. For the rest of the week, classes were canceled. When we returned, everything seemed back to normal, except the science wing. It was blocked off with yellow tape. I overheard one of the custodians say something about a maintenance issue. Collapsed section near the boiler room. But that made no sense. There was no boiler room near the science wing. Curious and stupidly brave, I decided to check it out after school. The hallway was dimly lit, empty. I slipped under the tape and followed the sound of dripping water. At the end of the corridor, I found a door I'd never noticed before. It looked old, older than the rest of the building, with peeling paint and a rusted handle. A faded sign above it read, "Janitorial access, authorized personnel only." I hesitated, then turned the knob. It opened easily. Beyond the door was a narrow, unlit hallway, not on any school map I'd ever seen. The air was damp, smelling of mildew and something metallic. I pulled out my phone for light. The hallway seemed to stretch forever. Pipes lined the ceiling, dripping occasionally. I took a few steps in, and that's when I saw them. Footprints. Dark gray, like soot, leading deeper inside. I followed them. Every step echoed unnaturally, like the walls were absorbing the sound. I started to feel dizzy, disoriented. The air grew colder. Then I saw it. A janitor's cart, identical to the one from before, standing perfectly still in the middle of the path. The mop leaned against it, dry as ever, and beside it, taped to the wall, was a school ID card. It was old and faded, but I could still read the name. Harold B. Fisher, maintenance supervisor. The photo showed the same man I'd seen in the hallway, the tall janitor with the mask. Only this ID was dated 1989. Before I could process that, I heard the sound of footsteps again, but this time, coming from behind me, I spun around. My phone flickered. The lights down the hallway went out, one by one. Tap, tap, tap. The sound was getting closer. "Harold?" I whispered without thinking. A voice answered, faint and distorted. I never left. The mop handle clattered to the ground behind me. I bolted, sprinting toward the exit, heart pounding so hard I could barely breathe. The hallway felt endless, like it was stretching the faster I ran. Finally, I burst through the door and collapsed in the main corridor. When I looked back, the door was gone. Just solid wall. The next day, the science wing was completely sealed off. The administration said they were renovating it. A week later, rumors started spreading that the janitor's closet in the basement had been found open again, with wet footprints leading from it. Even though the floor above was dry, no one's seen the man since, but sometimes, late at night when the custodians do their rounds. It happened during my senior year of high school, the year everything was supposed to be normal again. We had just gotten back from a long winter break, and everyone was dragging themselves through the halls like zombies. I remember it was early January, cold enough that the windows fogged up from inside. I was in third period English, sitting near the back window, doodling in my notebook while our teacher, Mrs. Cooper, droned on about Shakespeare. My best friend Jamie sat next to me half asleep, her breath fogging the glass. Then, without warning, the loudspeaker cracked on with a burst of static. Attention staff and students, pause. This is a lockdown. This is not a drill. The class went silent. Mrs. Cooper froze mid-sentence. For a moment, none of us moved. We were so used to random fire drills that it didn't register. But then we noticed her face. She looked genuinely scared. Everyone down, she whispered, killing the lights. Against the far wall, move quickly. We shuffled into the corner, the floor cold beneath us. Jamie mouthed, "Is this real?" But I didn't answer. The intercom had never sounded like that before. The voice and the principals had this strange distortion, almost mechanical, like it had been slowed down slightly. After that, nothing. Just silence. We sat in the dark for what felt like forever. Someone's phone buzzed quietly, and a girl across from me started crying. Mrs. Cooper whispered for everyone to stay calm. Then, faintly we heard it, footsteps in the hallway. They weren't fast or heavy around, just slow, even deliberate, step, step, step. Mrs. Cooper glanced at the door, her breathing sharp and shallow. The handle rattled once, then stopped. We all froze, then a knock. Soft, rhythmic, 3 taps. Pause. 3 taps again, Mrs. Cooper mouthed. "Don't move." A voice followed. Male, low, calm. "Mrs. Cooper." It was our principal's voice. At least it sounded like him. "Everything's all right now," the voice said from behind the door. "You can come out." Mrs. Cooper stayed silent. She was trembling slightly. Then the voice came again, more insistent this time. "I said it's all right now," she whispered under her breath. "That's not him." The man outside began knocking again, harder. The sound made my chest tighten. I wanted to scream. Then just as suddenly it stopped. The footsteps started again, moving away. A minute later, the intercom clicked on once more, and this time, it was the real principal's voice. "Attention staff, the lockdown is real. Do not open any doors until further notice." My stomach dropped. Whoever was in the hallway wasn't him. 30 minutes later, the police arrived and cleared the building. They said it was a false alarm. Someone had apparently seen a man outside near the parking lot carrying what looked like a gun, but it turned out to be a folded tripod. Everyone laughed nervously about it at lunch, but no one mentioned the fake principal voice. I thought maybe we'd imagined it. The distortion, the echo, maybe just panic messing with our ears. But that night, as I was scrolling through TikTok, I saw a post from a girl in the grade below me. She'd recorded part of the lockdown, the intercom announcement. When I played it, my stomach went cold. It wasn't just distorted. The voice had a weird double-layered effect, like someone speaking just slightly out of sync with themselves. Almost human, but not quite. 2 days later, it happened again. We were in 5th period taking a pop quiz. The intercom clicked on with the same static crackle. "Attention staff and students. This is a lockdown. This is not a drill." But this time the voice wasn't the principal's. It was flat, monotone, like someone reading words they didn't understand. Our teacher, Mr. Nguyen, looked confused. "What the hell?" he muttered. Then louder. "Everyone against the wall." As we moved, the announcement repeated itself. Over and over. The same line in the same robotic tone. "Attention staff and students. This is a lockdown. This is not a drill." It played again. And again. Each time, the pitch dropped slightly, like the recording was decaying. Then the sound changed. On the 5th repetition, Something whispered underneath the main voice, too quiet to catch fully. But I could swear it said, "They're already inside." Jamie clutched my arm. "Did you hear that?" I nodded, unable to speak. Mr. Nguyen grabbed the phone on his desk and tried calling the office, but the line was dead. He started toward the hallway, but we all begged him not to go. He hesitated, then locked the door and backed away. The announcement stopped. Then, faintly, another sound echoed through the hall. This time, laughter. Not joyful laughter. Mocking. Childlike. And it was coming closer. The lights flickered once. Someone banged hard on the lockers outside, the metallic echo bouncing down the hall. Another bang, closer this time. Then a voice, almost sing-song. "Come out, come out." We stayed silent. My pulse was so loud in my ears I could barely hear anything else. The doorknob turned once, twice, then stopped. We all waited, every second dragging like an hour. Finally, the noise faded. The hallway fell silent again. 10 minutes later, the intercom clicked on. The real principal this time, voice shaking. "The lockdown is lifted. Everyone remain calm. Please return to class," but we were already in class. The police showed up again, but they didn't find anything. They claimed it was equipment malfunction. That was the official line. But students started talking. People in other wings said they'd heard the announcement too, except the voice wasn't the same. One class heard a woman's voice. Another heard multiple voices overlapping. The rumor was that the school's PA system had glitched, maybe a feedback loop or old recording. But nobody could explain the whispers, or why the lights flickered only in certain hallways. That Friday, the principal held an assembly in the gym. He stood on stage, calm but pale, and said, "We want to assure everyone that the safety of our students is our top priority. There have been no verified threats. What occurred was a technical issue with our communication system. Please disregard any rumors." He smiled weakly. But behind him, near the bleachers, the intercom speakers mounted on the wall flickered with a faint red light, like they were still recording. I saw it. And so did Jamie. The following Monday, everything spiraled. It was just after lunch when the announcement came again. No static this time, just dead silence before the voice started. "Attention staff and students. Pause. This is not a drill. Nothing else." Then the emergency lights came on. Those dim red bulbs that make everything look like a horror movie. The power had cut out completely. Everyone in the cafeteria started panicking. Teachers tried to calm people down, but the sound of chairs scraping and voices rising drowned them out. Then we heard the sound of doors slamming. One after another echoing down the hallways. Boom, 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 every exit locking. I grabbed Jamie's hand and pulled her toward the back corridor, one of the side exits by the art room. It had a glass window that looked out to the staff parking lot. When we reached it, I froze. Through the window I could see movement, a figure standing just outside, facing the building. It was too dark to see details, but I could make out the outline of a man. He wasn't moving, just standing there. Then the intercom crackled again. "Do not look outside," everyone stopped. The voice wasn't human. It was the same distorted tone as before, like a machine trying to imitate speech. "Do not look outside." Jamie squeezed my arm, whispering, "Oh my God, oh my God." The voice repeated again, louder. "Do not look outside," someone screamed. A freshman bolted for the main doors, ignoring the teachers shouting for her to stop. As soon as she touched the handle, every light in the hallway went out. The scream cut off. When the lights flickered back on a few seconds later, she was gone. The door was wide open, cold air rushing in. The man outside was no longer there. The lockdown lasted for almost 3 hours. Police swept every hallway, every classroom. No one was allowed to leave. When they finally escorted us out, they told us to go home and refrain from spreading misinformation. But word got out fast. By the next day, a dozen videos had popped up online. Grainy phone recordings of the announcements. The weird voice. The whispers. The phrase that still makes me shiver. "They're already inside." I couldn't sleep that night. Around 2 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It said, "You shouldn't have looked." I stared at it for a long time, heart pounding. I thought about ignoring it, but then curiosity got the better of me. I texted back, "Who is this?" No reply, just the typing. bubble that stayed for almost a full minute. Then my phone buzzed again. It was a voice message. When I pressed play, my blood turned to ice. It was the announcement. The exact same distorted voice. Except this time it said my name. Attention staff and students. This is not a drill. And my name is still inside. I dropped the phone. It hit the floor, still playing the faint sound of static. Then I heard something else. From downstairs, and my parents were asleep, the house silent, came the soft hum of an intercom speaker. But we didn't have one. I walked slowly toward the hallway, my pulse hammering. The sound grew louder. When I reached the bottom of the stairs, I realized it wasn't an intercom. It was coming from my phone on the floor, still buzzing, still playing that static. And underneath the static, faint but clear, a whisper, "Look outside." I turned toward the window. There, standing in the yard beneath the streetlight, was the same man from the school, his face hidden in shadow, his posture stiff. He lifted his hand slowly and pointed upward, directly at me. The lights flickered once, twice, and then everything went black. It started as one of those weirdly quiet mornings that never sit right with you, the kind where the hallways feel just a little too empty. The lights flicker just a second too long, and everyone's whispering like they already know something you don't. I was a senior then, a few weeks away from graduation, and we all had that lazy, half-detached energy that comes right before freedom. That day, our English teacher, Mrs. Carver, was out sick. Instead, we had a substitute, a tall man in his late 40s, maybe 50s, with slicked-back gray hair and dark-rimmed glasses that looked a decade out of style. He didn't smile when he introduced himself. Didn't even give a name. Just said, "Open your books to page 127. Something about him was off. It wasn't just that he was stern or quiet. It was the way he'd stare at you a few seconds too long, like he was trying to memorize your face. He moved slowly, deliberately, like every step mattered. No one dared to talk while he was in the room. Even Trevor, who always found a way to crack jokes no matter how serious the teacher was, stayed silent. Halfway through class, while we were supposed to be annotating a poem, the intercom crackled. The principal's voice came through, shaky but clear. "This is a lockdown. Repeat, this is a lockdown. Teachers, secure your classrooms immediately. This is not a drill." Everyone froze. I swear for a split second I could feel every heartbeat in that room. The substitute didn't move at first. He just stood there, head tilted, listening. Then, without saying a word, he turned and locked the classroom door. Pulled the blinds, switched off the lights. We all sat there in tense silence, the only sound being the faint hum of the air vents and the quick breathing of 20 teenagers trying not to panic. Then someone whispered, "What's going on?" The sub turned his head so sharply that it made me flinch. His eyes looked almost black in the dim light. "Quiet," he said. "Do not speak." A few minutes passed. Or maybe it was longer. Time stretches when you're terrified. From the hallway came faint echoes and running footsteps, doors slamming, someone yelling. I couldn't make out words, but it didn't sound like the calm voice of a staff member. The substitute stood perfectly still near the door, his head slightly cocked like he was listening to something we couldn't hear. Then came the sound that made my stomach twist, a single gunshot. Somewhere in the building, the entire class jumped. Someone gasped out loud, then clamped a hand over their mouth. I saw tears running down the face of the girl sitting next to me, but she didn't make a sound. Another shot. Closer this time. Followed by heavy footsteps, the substitute didn't move. He just raised a finger to his lips again. But this time something was wrong. His hand was trembling. "Sir," I whispered. "Shouldn't we?" He turned around and glared at me. His face had gone pale, beads of sweat running down his temple. "Nobody moves," he hissed. Not a sound. A shadow passed by the crack at the bottom of the door. Whoever it was paused there, right outside. The footsteps stopped, and then a voice, a man's voice, calm and low. "Mr. Grayson," it said. "I know you're in there." Every hair on my body stood on end. That wasn't the principal's voice. It wasn't anyone from school. The substitute froze. His lips parted slightly like he wanted to respond, but he didn't. "Mr. Grayson," the voice repeated, louder now with a hint of anger. "You can't hide from me this time. Grayson." That must have been his name. None of us breathed. The air in the room felt thick, suffocating. The voice outside laughed, a slow, deliberate laugh that made my skin crawl. "You think they'll protect you? You think a bunch of kids will save you? The footsteps started again, slow and heavy, fading down the hallway. After a long, horrible silence, the sub finally whispered, "Stay here. Do not open the door for anyone." And before we could stop him, he unlocked the door and stepped out. We all sat frozen in disbelief. Someone whispered, "What the hell is he doing?" Another said, "He's insane." But nobody dared to follow. We waited, 5 minutes, maybe 10, until another gunshot rang out. Then silence. Everyone started whispering and panicking. Someone wanted to call 911, but there was no signal. Another tried to open the window, but it wouldn't budge. Then faintly from the hallway won the sound of dragging. Something heavy being pulled across the floor. It stopped right outside the door. A soft knock followed. 3 times. "Kids," came the voice, but this time it was different, softer. "It's okay. It's Mr. Grayson. You can open the door." None of us moved. He knocked again, louder. "It's okay now." Trevor, sitting nearest the door, whispered, "That doesn't sound like him." And he was right. The voice was off. The tone was wrong, like someone imitating another person but missing the emotion behind it. Then came the scraping sound again, something metallic dragging along the tiles. I saw a dark stain start to spread under the door, slowly seeping into the room. Someone whimpered. Another started crying quietly. The lights flickered once, twice, then everything went black. We sat there in total darkness, breathing shallow, hearts pounding. The only sound was the occasional creak from the hallway. When the emergency lights finally came on, red, dim, and eerie, we saw it. A handprint smeared on the glass pane of the door. It wasn't a clean print. It looked like it had been made with blood. The rest of the day is a blur in my mind. I remember the sound of sirens, the police yelling for us to stay put, the heavy boots as officers burst in. They let us out one by one. The hallways were lined with uniforms, and there was blood on the floor near the stairwell. But the strangest part, they didn't find the substitute, or anyone else for that matter. No intruder. No body, only a single gun, unregistered, lying on the floor of the teacher's lounge. And in the main hallway, smeared across the lockers, were the words, "Found you." They kept the school closed for weeks. Reporters camped outside, spinning stories about a failed robbery, a disgruntled ex-employee, a possible mental breakdown. But none of the official reports ever mentioned the voice that called out Mr. Grayson. I went back one last time before graduation, just to grab some files from the office. The janitor let me in after hours. The place was quiet, too quiet. When I passed our old classroom, I stopped. On the floor near the teacher's desk, something caught my eye. A single sheet of paper folded in half. It was a page from an old attendance sheet. The teacher's name section had been filled out in shaky handwriting. Mr. Daniel Grayson, and beneath it, a single note, scrawled in red ink.